Hey friends, welcome back to She's At It Again. My name's Tanya. Right now it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I need to get some soup made for dinner. It's not quite super hot right now, so soup would be a perfect thing to have tonight. I have some sourdough bread, which I always have sourdough bread normally in the refrigerator at least. Have a few pieces left, so we need to use that up. I'm going to make some broccoli cheese soup and I'm going to take you along. I got my pot already on the stovetop over there, fixing to heat it up. Got my camera set up behind me, so let's go to the stove and make some broccoli cheese soup. All right, here we go with our soup. I've got my pot heating up. This is on about medium-low heat. We're going to put about 3 tablespoons of olive oil in there. Feel free to use butter if you'd rather. We're going to start sauteing some vegetables in here. So I have about a cup of chopped onions. I have 2 large organic mushrooms that I've sliced up. I've cleaned them up, cleaned the dirt off. I used to rinse mushrooms. I just don't do it anymore. I just kind of pick as much of the dirt off as I can. I just don't like the moisture to get to them. So 2 large mushrooms. And this is about a half cup of chopped celery, chopped pretty fine. And these are super finely chopped carrots. Let me make sure I'm getting a good view of this. You can see how finely chopped that is. Or finely shredded. It's not chopped, it's shredded. Now I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants with this recipe. I have a recipe that I've used for years, but I'm changing it up just a bit because I think I can actually make it better. So hopefully I can remember what I've done by the time I put the recipe in the description. I may have to go back and watch the video several times, which is not my favorite thing to do, but you do what you gotta. All right, we're gonna put a heaping 1/4 teaspoon of salt in this. We're just sweating those vegetables. Actually, let's put about a 1/2 teaspoon. None of my other stuff is salted, so I have some homemade chicken stock bone broth to put in this, and it's not salted, so I'm not worried about it being over salted. So a heaping 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We're going to let those vegetables sweat just a bit before we add anything else. This soup goes together really quick. Some soups you just have to saute and simmer and simmer and simmer and simmer and keep it warm forever for it to actually taste good. This one tastes good as soon as you get it put together. But it's going to be about 3 more hours before we actually eat dinner. So that's perfect. It'll give it time to sit there and just be its own good self in the pot, and then it'll still be a good temperature by the time we get ready to eat it. All right, the next thing I'm going to add is cream cheese, of course. I have about 4 ounces of cream cheese left in that package, and that's what we're going to add, 4 ounces. I have my camera set up right in front of the drawer where I have most of my measuring spoons, so I just decided to get a measuring cup from the cabinet above. So I was pretty stealth. I'm sure y'all didn't see that. All right, I'm simply doing this to get this to melt in here. Let me lift the camera up and I'll show you what that looks like. Oops. Unless I keep kicking it, then you won't be able to see it. So just keep chopping and stirring that cream cheese until it gets nice and smooth and dissolved. All right. Next thing we're going to do is add almost 1/4 cup of flour. Sprinkle it around in this. And that's going to make our roux, spelled R-O-U-X. So basically it's coating everything in there with the flour. It gives that flour a cooked taste instead of raw flour, which is not something you want to taste in a soup. So we're going to keep cooking it enough to where it cooks that raw flour taste out of it. The carrots in this aren't something you typically see in a broccoli cheese soup, but they're going to add just enough sweetness to it to where it will really enhance the flavor. And the mushrooms, they're going to give it that earthy flavor. If you have somebody that hates mushrooms, just grind them up. Pretend like you never even put them in there unless they ask, and then admit to it. That's why it's so delicious, is because yes, you added mushrooms. Okay, now this is going to have that film on the bottom, that fond. Actually, it's flour sticking to the bottom of the pan. But it will come up once we add our liquid to it, and it'll get all stirred in. Okay, the next thing we're going to add is some chicken stock. Now this is about, this looks to be like 2.5, 3 cups maybe. Sorry, I'm just not measuring it. It's probably a lot more difficult than you know to mess up a broccoli cheese soup. So it's not an exact measurement, but I would say between 2.5 and 3 cups probably. Note that. Now I have another quart of it behind me. I just went and got that out of the other refrigerator, so I'll have extra if the soup looks a bit thick at the end. We don't want it to be too thick. All right, keep your heat turned up to about medium. And we're now going to put our broccoli in. Now I've chopped up the broccoli into pieces that are pretty small. I don't think there's anything in there really over that big. So, and this is just a whole head of organic broccoli. And I've cut the big stems off of it. I'm not a fan of those. That's like trying to say that tree trunks belong in here, because they just have a little too much fiber in it. So, and it's just too hard to try to cook it to where it's soft. So that goes in a compost bin. Nothing's going to go to waste, but the worms in the compost bin will turn it into some good soil. All right, so we're going to let this cook for a while. I'm going to put the lid on it so that the steam can heat it from the top as much as it's getting heated from the bottom. So just toss it around there, get it all moist. We'll put the lid back on it, and we'll let this cook for just a few minutes, and then we'll come right back. All right, our broccoli has turned a bright green, and the mixture below it is getting thick, like a soup should when it has a roux in it. So what we don't want to do is let it cook long enough to where the roux starts scorching on the bottom of the pan. So we still wanted to get that broccoli good and steamed. Now you can cook your broccoli ahead of time. If you're in a big hurry, once you start everything else, go ahead and steam your broccoli in another pan. I just prefer to steam it in this because then it absorbs the flavor of that chicken broth instead of just absorbing the flavor of water. Just a little more power-packed flavor in there. All right, at this point, I'm going to add a cup of whole milk. You can kind of eyeball it at this point and see if, once it starts bubbling again, and see if that's the consistency you want it. If you want it a lot thinner than that, then go ahead and add either more milk or more chicken broth. I'm going to add more chicken broth to mine if it needs more. But if it's the consistency that you like, that you desire, and whatever you're going to serve it with, you want it either, you know, super thick or a little bit thinner, then just leave it as it is. We're still going to add our cheese to it, so don't think that this is the end of it. After all, it is broccoli cheese soup. Okay, this has come to a boil again, and I can see that the consistency of it's actually pretty good. But I'm going to go ahead and add more broth to it, just because I'm going to cook mine a little bit longer. And our broccoli is not done, so don't think, how did she get that to cook so fast? The broccoli is not done. It's just mine's going to sit on the stove top quite a while before we eat dinner, and that broccoli is going to steam with the heat under this lid, and it's going to be just fine by the time we eat it. And I love those big chunks of broccoli. Now, if you don't want a chunky soup, if you'd rather have a smoother soup, by all means, get out that immersion blender and blend it up just as smooth as you possibly can. And it makes a great drinkable soup to put in a mug and just sip on. So perfect either way. You really can't lose. Okay, in this is not what's in this container. I just keep these containers. I've shredded some sharp cheddar, and we're going to put that in there. I would say this is probably close to 24 ounces. So about 3 cups of shredded cheese. You could also add some Parmesan to this. If you want a really bold bite to it, you can add some Asiago cheese. You could add Swiss to it. If you want it to be a little bit stringy, you could add some mozzarella. Because we have the roux in there, it's not going to break apart. And you know how when you have like a liquid and you think, oh, I'll just add cheese to it, but then it just gets all stringy. It looks like blobs of jellyfish or something floating around in there. This is not going to be that way. The flour in the roux is what's going to carry it and even it out through the soup. So you're good about adding just about any kind of cheese you'd like to have the flavor of in there. All right, again, my broccoli is not completely soft, but I just want to give you a look at this because I'm fixing to turn the burner off, and our soup is pretty much done that we're going to have for dinner. It will be ready by the time we get ready at dinner. Okay, I'm going to try to avoid kicking this tripod, but still get a good shot of this. Okay, and that's what our soup looks like. Still got chunks in it, but again, if you want yours smoother than that, get out that immersion blender and just work it over good. Okay, so one more thing we want to do before we turn our burner off is we want to add about anywhere from a half to a full teaspoon of paprika. Now this isn't going to add a whole lot of heat to it, just going to add a little bit of flavor. And paprika is a good ingredient to add to just about any kind of savory soup. Okay, now that's our comprehensive list of ingredients. Okay, how easy was that? That's a pretty quick soup to make. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. We look forward to sharing something else with you next time. Thanks for spending the time with us to watch our video on broccoli cheese soup. Have a good day.